Divorce can be complicated, even more so if there are children involved. If you're a father and want to protect your rights, consider Cordell & Cordell. As a partner men can count on, they have helped men with matters like these for 30 years. Visit CordellCordell.com to learn more.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our...
An incident reported involving an overturned cement truck. This is on Harlem Avenue, right around 100th Place. I-80 westbound. Traffic still heavy, 183rd Street to LaGrange Road after a crash. We're looking at a delay there of at least 5 or 6 minutes right now on I-80 westbound. On the Kennedy outbound, traffic has improved quite a bit after a crash at Canfield. The travel time is 23 minutes downtown to O'Hare. Inbound, the travel time is 28 minutes, with delays starting around Canfield. Inbound Eisenhower, 43 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 31. Stevenson, 31 minutes, 355 to the drive. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center. Clouds give way to sunshine today. 37 for a high temp. Clear to partly cloudy and 31 overnight. It's 26 at O'Hare. Next news at 9. And Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and conversation with journalist Andy Ngo, who's been covering Antifa since those thugs almost killed him in Portland. He had some interesting observations about the coverage of all the violence and civil unrest that occurred last summer into the fall, and continues, an important observation, and continues as compared to the reactions and the coverage of what transpired on January 6th.
I mean, my takeaway from this whole thing is just the disparate treatment when it comes to right-wing versus left-wing political violence. The massive coverage on what happened at Capitol Hill is not just, I mean, what happened is significant, but it's being overblown to people comparing it to 9/11, where thousands of people were actually killed, comparing it to Pearl Harbor. And I find those comparisons quite disrespectful and not accurate of the events of the day. And then on the flip side, when it comes to covering actual insurgency attempts that are organized and funded and go on for months and months in major American cities, there's no coverage. So then the perception is that there's no threat coming from Antifa extremism.
Right, there's no threat coming from Antifa extremism, except if you are paying attention and to get accurate, consistent coverage of what's happening with that movement. You really don't have to go to Andy Ngo. Here's what's happening. Antifa is ascendant in his view.
Well, we're not even 2 weeks into 2021, and there's already been multiple Antifa-led riots in major American cities. And on top of that, since the Twitter banning of the U.S. president, there have been other protests by Antifa held in the streets that have become violent. 2 days ago, there was one in San Diego, and they were recorded on camera with signs saying, for example, that Ashley Babbitt deserved to die. She was one of the protesters who was killed at the Capitol. They were holding their propaganda flags and symbols, and they assaulted some Trump supporters on the beach. And then yesterday in Manhattan, there was I would call it a militia-style parade by Antifa. They were marching in the streets of Manhattan holding shields and in their black shirt uniforms and their riot gear and talking about how these streets are theirs. So they are ascendant in that they feel empowered, and that not only do they have now a soft ally in the incoming administration, they also have quite explicit allies in big tech.
soft ally in the incoming administration and explicit allies in big tech. Antifa does, not just an idea. How is that so? Well, for perhaps an explanation to the dynamic that Andy No describes comes to us from Mark Bauerlein. He is an English professor at Emory University. He is also the author of the book, and I want to get this title right because it's one of those titles that you can't remember, but you remember it's funny.
It's a long one. Take a deep breath.
I want to make sure I get the book right. It's The Dumbest Generation: How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future, or Don't Trust Anyone Under 30. Professor Bauerlein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So what Andy No is describing about the disparate coverage, the attention paid, even the acknowledgement, the existence of when it comes to leftist violence, not just what we saw over the summer, but even in real time as we're having a discussion about where the lines are properly drawn with respect to protest versus criminal conduct. Do you have an explanation as to why that may be, why those who preach nonviolence from the left when it comes to rioting inside the Capitol are not willing to do so when it comes to rioting on the streets of Portland or San Diego or Manhattan?
Well, liberals in power for 80 years have known that there is a violent left in America. It goes back 100 years with some of the labor movements, the socialists, and going through the 60s, the SDS, and now Antifa. They know that there is a violent left, but liberals have always granted left-wing protests, left-wing militants with a certain degree of legitimacy. They don't like the violence, but they're willing to acknowledge, yes, you have a legitimate grievance. It could be racial grievance, sexual grievance, whatever. And so they have formed ways of kind of appeasing, containing the left. Now, right-wing violence, which is a much, much smaller thing, they then have a vested interest in exaggerating the reality of right-wing violence. They can put themselves in the kind of reasonable middle, trying to moderate between the extremes in American life. So they have to exaggerate what happened at the Capitol. We know it was bad, but they have to build it up into something much worse than all of the looting, the fires, the rioting that took place last summer in order to maintain their position as the reasonable, responsible elite who deserves to run these institutions. And liberal leaders have an investment in maintaining order and stability. The left loves disorder and instability. That's how you bring about revolution. When you turn the society upside down, when you make people feel uneasy, dissatisfied, that's when you can introduce radical changes. This is really the positioning that is going on with the Antifa. It's a form of intimidation. It's telling leaders in tech, in corporations, and in politics, you better give us some of the things we want. And of course, no matter what Joe Biden gives them, they will always maintain the adversarial attitude because that's how they get more.
And it's hypocritical because, big tech hasn't silenced Antifa or BLM, but yet they silence President Trump on every platform imaginable.
That's right. And they're going to keep doing it when they apply the double standards. We all know how inconsistent it all is. They shrug. This is the way we are operating. Right now, the media, most journalists now, younger journalists, the millennial journalists, the dumbest generation. I actually have a book coming out in a few months called Dangerous Utopians, The Dumbest Generation Grows Up. They're 30 years old now, and they don't believe really in the First Amendment. They succumb to ideas of let's create the society we all want to live in. This ends up being a process of manufacturing a reality. Younger journalists, the media, are not in pursuit of the truth. They are trying to fabricate a vision that will bring about, again, the wonderful utopian world that we're all supposed to live in, where there's no discrimination and everyone's equal and nobody is deprived and everybody is happy. The media are an instrumental part of this utopian process. And so this is the way we have to approach journalism today. It's not about truth. It's all tactics. It's strategies.
And just to, some concrete examples to illustrate what you're saying. This is why Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe signs on to a petition to seek the disbarment of Senators Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley. He has to be seen as indulging the I'll be generous, the activist left, lest he lose his sinecure at Harvard, he lose his social status associated with being a man of the left in the hallowed halls of academia. And so I think it's difficult for people to, until they think this through the way you have, to understand why those people who decry violence on the one hand refuse to take on Jacobins on the left, and this is the explanation for it, that they can't do that and maintain what they have, and their charge is to keep the wheel spinning, to keep the money coming into these institutions, to maintain everybody's status, so give them what they want because they can just create havoc for us, as you said, appease them, but you have to create a real enemy to fight, and so then they go all in with scapegoating the right.
This is where the whole rhetorical game of victimization and injustice comes into play. Lawrence Tribe is a straight white male. He's at the top of an institution that has been accused of being guilty of systemic racism for decades. That means that he has to do penance. He has to demonstrate he knows he's kind of guilty, but he wants to be innocent, and so he is going to sign on. Joe Biden is actually the perfect president for the activist left because he's a guilty old white man who must do permanent penitence. He is a much better president for them to have than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has an identity that looks at the activist left on those grounds and saying, I don't know, you nothing. Joe Biden is guilty. He has to prove his innocent motives today every single week. That's why you have so many college presidents who are old white males. Instead of forcing them to step down and put a person of color in there, the whole game of guilt would go away.
And so Evergreen State University, you have the old white male president of Evergreen State who sides with the mob against liberal Professor Brett Weinstein, who wouldn't go along with the all white people off campus for a day activism of the left on that campus. But the university president throws Weinstein under the bus because he can't take on those Jacobins, and so you see this repeating itself, and this comes from a place, as AOC, since you mentioned her, is the great avatar of this. I don't have to be technically correct because I'm morally correct. All of this cancellation comes from this basis that my position is the morally superior position, so it doesn't need to countenance dissent, and it doesn't need to countenance dissenters. And anybody who stands in our way or does not fall in line with us gets rolled over because they're moral inferiors.
I wish that Republican senators, politicians, would learn the lesson of this election for Donald Trump. After 4 years of accusations of racist, his segment of the minority vote went up, and it went up significantly. There are many middle-class African Americans and Hispanics, Latinos, who are tired of hearing the victim narrative. They have moved into the middle class, and a lot of them don't want to hear it. And the Republicans are listening too much to the activists in those minority groups and the media figures in those minority groups. They are not representative of as many voters as they think they are. Of course, most voters still go with the Democrats, but the numbers are changing. If you start ignoring this victimology narrative and treat them as Americans, we're all Americans, and this is a land of opportunity. It's not a land of racism.
When since college campuses have been the sort of the canary in the coal mine for culture, what's the next iteration of the purge on a college campus? Tenure or no tenure? I know most of the dissent has been and dissenters have been eliminated, but what do you see next? I mean, considering you're an English prof at Emory.
What I'll say is the places where the identity politics have been strongest, that is in the humanities, those are dying. Students are leaving those areas of the college campus. They're not majoring in English and history nearly as much as they used to. Those fields are down 25, 30% in terms of majors in the last 10 years. So students are voting with their feet, and administrators are kind of happy to let those fields wither away. Their big issue is science, research, federal dollars, big investment in business schools, professional schools. So in that sense, the university is becoming more and more of a kind of research. They run hospitals and things like that. So that's one thing that we're seeing. And the purge is complete. It's done. Conservatives don't exist. They were 10% 30 years ago. Now they're 2%. So the personnel factor is over. Now I think the issue is going to be, can leftists run these centers? Can liberal leaders run these centers by appeasing leftists while still appearing like viable intellectual enterprises? I don't think they're going to be very successful in doing that. But a lot of these schools like Williams College, they have a ton of money. The elite can go on doing this for a long, long time.
He is Professor Mark Bauerlein, English professor at Emory University, senior editor of First Things, author of The Dumbest Generation, How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future, or Don't Trust Anyone Under 30. Professor Bauerlein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
Being a truck driver, I don't always eat right, and it kind of balances out my natural body mechanisms and gives me a lot of energy. And I just recently went to the doctor to do a bunch of tests, and what was amazing, just like other people have said in your advertisements, is the first question was, what are you doing? I've never seen such good blood work. You are perfect. And so I told her this balance of nature. And I said, you really need to look it up because it works. So my checkup was excellent. So I'm just thrilled. I am really happy.
Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order. Call 1-800-2468-751 or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code Chicago.
Hey, for years you've heard the familiar name of Turnkey IT, locally owned and operated. They've told their story about successfully providing IT solutions for hundreds of Chicagoland businesses, many of which are also supporters of AM 560. And now Turnkey turns a new chapter in their business, Turnkey Consulting. Turnkey Consulting came out of the need for so many small businesses looking for help to grow their business beyond just networking systems. Turnkey's team of consulting experts have decades of real-world experience in both corporate and small businesses. They know how to make an immediate impact to drive your company forward, no matter the size or industry. Get started today with Turnkey's Opportunity Scorecard, which provides a thorough analysis of your business, its systems, its offerings, and most importantly, a roadmap to greater profits. That's what we all want. In just 2 weeks, you can have a new insight into making 2021 your company's best year ever. And now, for a limited time, your business receives the Opportunity Scorecard for 50% off the normal price. So visit turnkey.pro today to schedule it. That's turnkey.pro.
Steve Cortez here. Small business owners and those of you who make marketing decisions for businesses, listen up. 2021 is here. How's your marketing plan? 2021 will be a comeback year for so many small businesses, but you'll bounce back faster if you're getting your marketing message to the right audience. That's why you need to become a Food for the Poor business benefactor. We run this campaign in November and December, but we always have a few slots that open up in January. So don't wait to take advantage of them. Here's how it works. You make a $2,500 tax-deductible donation to Food for the Poor to help them